Great, and we're live. Welcome everybody to this Hangout on Air. My name is Lisette and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And I'm over the top excited today to be speaking with folks from the Solar System Exploration Research Virtual Institute, SSERVI. And it just doesn't get more remote than this when we're doing solar system exploration. So I'm eager to get started, and we have with us today Ashkan Nijad, Ricky Guest, Yvonne Pendleton, and Teague Soderman, who will be joining us in a second. Welcome, everybody. And Yvonne, I understand you're going to give us a general overview, and we'll do some introductions after the overview, but we'll do an overview about what SSERVI is and what you're doing.
Sure. I'm happy to do that. So SSERVI is the newest virtual institute that NASA has put together, and what we do is we study solar system objects including the moon, near-Earth asteroids, and the moons of Mars. We have researchers across the country. We have about 318 to be exact, and they are grouped in teams, and these teams work together in virtual space. And then they also work with us virtually. We have a central office here at NASA Ames Research Center, which is in Northern California. So my staff of about 15, we have what we call the central office, and our central office oversees and gives the money to the research teams that are doing the really exciting cutting-edge science and research exploration. So that's how we operate. We have just started. This year is our first year. We have 5 years of funding for the current set of teams, but every 2.5 years we will be selecting a new set of teams that will merge in with the existing ones so that there's always continuity. And the hope is that SSERVI will go on for a couple of decades. You know, we're hoping that this is something that will just grow as our human exploration of the solar system grows. We're jointly funded, I should tell you, between the Science Mission Directorate of NASA and the Human Exploration Directorate of NASA. This is the first time that something like this has been jointly supported by those two endeavors, and we really believe that science enables exploration and exploration enables science. So we're trying to help answer the questions that you need to know before you go.
Wow, so you have 318 researchers across the world or the country?
Across the country, but I'm glad you brought that up because we also have 8 international partners. The difference between a team and an international partner is that the domestic U.S. teams have been competitively selected. They wrote proposals that went through the peer review process. The international partners also write a proposal, but that doesn't go through a peer review process. That goes through a high-level review at NASA and, in some cases, the State Department, depending on just how all-encompassing that partnership is, whether it's from space agency to space agency, as is the case with Germany, or whether it's an affiliation with one or more universities in the country.
Wow, so your staff of 15 is actually trying to get all of these people from across the country and around the world collaborating together on one common goal. Is that, do I have that right?
That's exactly right. The common goal being to advance science and exploration, the joint working together of those two. The specific goals vary depending on what the team interests are and what the international partners are bringing to the table. And in some cases, it could be about the early evolution of the solar system, how we all came to be, and how the bombardment of the moon also affected the Earth, that kind of question. Another way could be to go out and collect field samples. Here on the Earth, we have a lot of places that are good analogs for what we think it would be like to be on an asteroid or on the moon or on Mars. And so by studying and learning how astronauts can work effectively in the field here, we could better prepare the astronauts that would later go to some of these more remote, distant places. So it's a very broad spectrum that includes many disciplines of science and has many applications to human exploration.
I can imagine. I mean, it seems like an extremely broad horizon of things to explore. So I look forward to talking more about the challenges of the collaboration and the successes. as we get into the conversation. Before we go further in, though, I want to introduce and have the others introduce themselves. Ricky, why don't you go ahead and let us know what you're doing?
Sure. I'm the Senior Systems Technical Specialist, and so basically what I do is help the teams communicate with each other. Putting together the different technologies behind the tools that we use for them to be able to remotely connect and talk. So we're constantly looking at new ways to do this, integrating the systems, and not just the systems, but the support behind it. We don't just give them software or hardware and say, go do your thing. We have a team of people that we have help support them and integrate these things into their everyday working life.
So the implementation of tools as well as the tools themselves.
Yeah, so often we find, if you just give them the tools, they will not they won't use them because they're not comfortable with them, and that's not what they're good at. They don't need to know that stuff. They just need to know their science and be able to communicate with the other scientists, and we're there to help them so that try to make it as seamless as possible, so that they just show up, turn on their systems, and things just work. And they don't have to worry about how it works. It just works, and they can get right to doing the science that they need.
Wow, I really look forward to diving into that further. I have heard about the implementations of tools on various teams, and I'm curious the challenges that you run into on that, and also the successes of how people like the tool. So, very eager. Ashkan, how about you?
Sure. Hi, my name is Ashkan, and I'm a technical systems specialist here at SSERVI. Aside from facilitating the production of virtual events and collaborative seminars and things like that, I also administer SSERVI's web presence both on a front and back end, and additionally support both the central staff and the larger team across the globe with IT support as well.
Wow. So that's it. So you've got to communicate to the world via the website what exactly
Right.
everybody's doing.
Right.
To the common man, to have the common man understand the science behind what's going on.
And I'd like to jump in here and say something about how spectacularly this team does that. Ashkan and Ricky are two, but we have a couple of others that are not here today who also help out. And what I've been so impressed by, Lizette, is the fact that they are willing to do this at any time of day or night. Sometimes last week, I guess, we just finished doing a meeting, facilitating a meeting that originated in Paris. So we were doing it on Paris time to make it easier for the participants that were local there. And, Ricky and Ashkan just are so willing to make themselves available at these really difficult times in the middle of the night here. And I think it's because we all really believe in what we're doing, and we can see the effect that we're getting more bang for the buck, more communication is happening that enables new science discoveries at the intersection of disciplines that otherwise might never have met. And so I can't thank them enough, because without their work, we would have no way of doing the great stuff that we're doing. So I just wanted to jump in and say that. I'm actually going to have to walk away now and go take another meeting, but I want to let you get back to Ashkan. But I know that he and Ricky will not boast about themselves the way they should, and so I wanted to do a little bit of that before I have to say goodbye.
Awesome, thank you. It's always good for people to have a voice behind them. The promotion. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to step aside, and I'm going to let Teague step in here. But Great. It was good talking to you. Good luck.
So Teague, this is probably a great opportunity for you to introduce yourself.
Okay, let me raise my desk up a little bit here. My name is Teague Soderman. I'll change my lower third.
So no one's confused.
And I'm a senior science writer here at SSERVI, and so I wear several hats, but one of them is communicating the science and the results that come out of our team collaborations through Public Affairs Office here at Ames Research Center, as well as the Public Affairs Office at NASA headquarters. And so I'm working with news outlets, news agencies, I'm writing captions to photos, and also sometimes translating science-ese into going to be understandable by a general public audience. I also help get funding for scientific research. And these brilliant scientists have brilliant ideas, work with engineers, and then pitch their concepts to NASA in order to receive funding for that research. The people making those funding decisions, however, are not experts in the field of heliophysics. They're very often manager types. And so the material that we have to produce must communicate concisely and quickly to the non-scientific audience, but also hold up to scientific scrutiny by the experts in that field. So it's quite a challenge to get something to communicate on multiple levels to multiple audiences. But we've had some good success. We've recently gotten some space missions funded and launched, like NASA's recent LADEE mission, LCROSS mission, and LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is taking some fantastic images of the lunar surface at high resolution detail.
Wow, that's a real art to be able to talk between the common person and the scientist, because there's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of details that the common person just has never heard before. So how could they understand? So wow.
Yeah, it's a fun position to be in because it's always changing. I never get bored. One month it's about the moon, and another month it's about the sun and heliophysics, sometimes nanotechnology, getting really, really itty-bitty with our science. And so it's always changing and always in flux, and that keeps it interesting.
So the first question then I really want to ask is, so you've got these researchers teams and international partners all over the world. How did you start? How did you start the conversation of we're going to get everybody together? How does that happen even? I mean, I've been trying to set up a meeting between 5 people and it was hard, so I can't imagine 318 teams plus 8 international partners. How do you start?
Well, luckily we started as the NASA Lunar Science Institute, and we became SSERVI once the scope expanded beyond just the moon to include near-Earth objects and the moons of Mars, etc. But we kind of got a chance to dial it in under the Lunar Science Institute, and that institute was modeled after a successful NASA Astrobiology Institute, which is also a virtual institute. And so we had some framework and some institute model to draw from for our continued success. And that NAI originally, and Ricky has been part of the NAI as well for a long time, he can also talk about this, but Barack Bloomberg was a Nobel laureate who had a big hand in establishing the Astrobiology Institute and was a senior scientist here at the Lunar Science Institute before he passed away. And he was very keen on trying to come up with new paradigms for collaboration and wanted to do things like make new paths where people cut across the grass instead of walking the sidewalks, and trying to facilitate what's naturally trying to occur. And so he I think had some fundamental insight into how to get to teams to collaborate. And we do generally do an executive council meeting every month where we have our principal investigators, our PIs, who lead each team or node of the institute. So very often we don't communicate at all 300 scientists at once, but we disperse the information down or up from the institute here to those teams and nodes around the US and around the world, and then those principal investigators will also hold meetings with their larger team to discuss their science and the research happening. I don't know if Ricky wanted to add anything.
Yeah, and then the only other thing, we do have an annual a forum where we get a large group of people coming together, usually in person, but we do have a virtual aspect of that also, so that it does cover both grounds, so that people who can't travel for one reason or another can still attend the forum, and so we have a large audience of both in person and virtual that can participate in that annual event.
And how do people participate virtually? Is it, I understand you use Adobe Connect. Is that also what you use for these meetings, or is there something else?
So Adobe Connect is a system, much like WebEx, where it allows for video sharing, screen sharing, also chat, and it has a lot of other features that we settled on for our team's usage. So we don't stick to just one technology. We chose Adobe Connect for that solution, and we don't use it in all by itself. We use it in conjunction with a standards-based video teleconferencing systems. So we sort of mix these different technologies so that there's high definition video in conjunction with nice screen sharing and recording capabilities. And so for a lot of our events, we will do that, but we're not married to those technologies. We're constantly looking at other opportunities, other solutions that might fit better for different teams or for different events. We have used Google Hangouts, Google On Air in the past for other events, and we're always looking at newer technologies, trying to keep the pace and keep up with what's out there and what our community might be interested in using. And so we're always on the look for the latest and the newest to see if it fits what our teams might want to use.
I can imagine that each team really does need its own system based on however they work or whatever is good for them. So I can see that being one aspect. And another aspect I've run into is it's good to have a backup system. So when Google Hangouts fails, which does happen, it's really good to be able to move to GoToMeeting or to Skype or another system. So it's good to have the backup. So
definitely, and we always want to make sure that we're not just giving them the tools, but we have a support system for them. So if something's not working, they can tell us, and we can work those issues out, and so that they can just continue on with their science, and we can make sure that the technology behind it gets working.
So I want to dive deeper into this implementation aspect of the tools, because I think that's a really interesting part. But Ashkan, I want to give you a chance to say something before I just dive in. Is there anything else that you want to add to this?
I think just the key component, and one that we, not to boast or anything, but just that we excel in through experience, is primarily just the ability to accommodate all sorts of different technologies, all sorts of different people, different locations. That's a key ingredient to what makes a lot of these events successful and a lot of these workshops collaborative and inviting. The forum particularly, it's a conference, it's an in-person meeting. The idea is to come together as a group and find opportunities to collaborate with one another. And there's a portion of that doesn't or could not translate well virtually. But again, using the right technology, using the right resources available to these people, that's how we can make it a successful event. And so it's refreshing and always rewarding when we can facilitate that kind of stuff.
So how do you go about learning about the tools? Is it just ear to the ground, people making suggestions, doing the research, or is there...
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously a lot of prime companies within each specialty field. So, the companies like Cisco and Polycom when it comes to actual hardware video teleconferencing systems. The software companies like Adobe and Google and, like Livestream and Ustream, things like that for the online component of it. And being able to stay ahead of the game, or at least keep up with all the new releases, involves a lot of research with the companies themselves, staying on newsletters, checking up on the blogs that are related to this field, but additionally the actual in-person conferences. So like the Consumer Electronics Show, although that might not highlight specific video teleconferencing systems in a commercial environment, it might highlight like the next series of webcams that consumers can buy. And those are things that can make someone's office, just like a small office space, better. But then there's, of course, the specialty conferences that are related to our professional audio-video field, like Infocom, which was a recent one that we've gone to, or like the NAB show for broadcasters. That's a lot of audio and video components as well. And we kind of mix and match and take parts from all sorts of resources. And we're very good at being creative and kind of molding a system that works for us. And so it's nice in that sense to be able to have that freedom of flexibility and putting different components together to create the perfect solution.
As a note, I was actually at Infocom via robot. I beamed into the Suitable Technologies booth and drove around and looked at all the gadgets. It was awesome.
How neat, yeah. I might have walked right by you.
I was there with a friend. We were going to have virtual tea together via Skype, and I said, hey, there's this conference. We could beam in on robots and have virtual tea together in Las Vegas. How does that sound? So that was great. So let's talk about the implementation of these tools for a bit. I think that's really interesting because not everybody is good with technology and with the tools, and even sometimes the simplest tool can be really difficult for a team. So how do you help people find and use the tools that's best for them?
Yeah, it's very important to do things like one-on-one trainings or group training sessions or, again, any type of communication resource available, whether it be phone or, email or whatever. It's important for us to really stretch those resources and use them during training sessions. So if a client or, a participant is getting ready to set up Google Hangouts, for example, they're going to need the Google software to go with it, the drivers. And so, if they get stuck during that, obviously it's whether or not a phone call or screen sharing, if that's something that we've enabled in the past, just to work with them one-on-one. We're very personal in that sense, and it's the customer service is essentially the key ingredient here. It's very important to work with them one-on-one or in a group setting again, to really just work through any type of issues. And we do this so often that we really do know like the back of our hand. We know exactly if this error message comes up, we know exactly what that means. And the minimum requirements for all sorts of things, it's easy for us to, figure those out on the fly.
And then each of our teams has an IT lead, and so we work with all those leads, get all those leads trained up to make sure that they can handle any of these small things that their local PIs might have any issues with. And if they have any larger issues, they can come to us and we can work with them directly so that the scientists don't have to worry about it. But it's getting all the IT leads well trained, and then for individual events, like Ashkan said, we do like to do a little short 5 to 10 minute training session with everybody that might be presenting, so that they're comfortable with the tools that so they're not going in on the first time trying to figure out what to do, and so that they have a sense of what to do and they already know it, and it's much more comfortable for them. So it's definitely about making sure the presenters are comfortable and don't have to worry about the technology, and it just then goes smoothly at that point.
It sounds ideal, this one-on-one training, but how has it scaled? You have a lot of people to train.
There are times where we've had to train for a large event 60 people, and we have um, 4 or 5 people on our staff that can do that training. So then we just break it up over, the week before the event, and it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And in some cases, we can do a group training where several people can all log in together, and then we'll just sort of pass the presentation capabilities to each person, and then they can learn from the previous person's either mistakes or successes, seeing how they do it. And it's like, oh, okay, and then it gets a little easier for the next one to then turn on their camera, upload a file, advance slides, things like that. And so, especially after doing it a few times as the trainer, it does get real simple. And somebody has an issue, whether it's on a Mac or a PC, it's like, okay, yeah, I've seen that before. You just go do this. On occasion, there are new errors that we haven't seen, and we'll sort of take those off to the side, and then try and work offline with those people so that their systems do get up and running eventually. But so we won't leave anybody without getting the support that they need.
We should also note that when the Institute takes on a new team, we give them the specs and sort of requirements for a minimum technology acquisition, that they then go and acquire the screens and the computers and the tech that will sort of help provide a common platform to use in our future collaborations. And then Ricky has mentioned also helping them through any of the tech stuff. Occasionally they'll actually fly out to that location to configure their systems accordingly. And on super special events, if it's really important, going to headquarters, NASA headquarters, occasionally we've had a staff person fly out to Washington, D.C. in order to make sure that they're connected. We'll test the systems and make sure we're not going to have an embarrassing glitch, during some important NASA headquarters seminar. So that also helps, when that we have some commonalities in technology, and that then helps us know that we're going to have a handle on the system. And then you're accommodating for the person on their cell phone or some other technology that's coming in. You're limiting the number of sort of new devices and connections that might come into play.
So I can imagine that being in such close contact with people helps really personalize this whole experience as well. I mean, you're really getting to know every single person. I mean, a 5-minute conversation can make a huge difference when you've talked to somebody on video. So when you send out these specs, are these more technology specs, or are there also like team agreements for how you're going to communicate with each other, the more personal aspects? Are those all, do you also have sort of those kind of agreements that are in place with people?
With respect to the technology kind of particular components, we'll send the hardware and specific equipment that they'll need to procure to establish a good connection and a well-lit and just an overall good-looking production. Now, that being said, perhaps you're talking about the etiquette of like the virtual event and how one would carry themselves and how communication is kind of flowed and things like that. And we do that very well here at SSERVI. With Yvonne, during executive council meetings, there is a set structure. And so, initially it takes usually no more than one meeting for everyone to kind of get the flow of how everything goes. And the way that's nice with our system is at least at all times, all participants can see each other. And it's different than being in person with one another, but with high-definition video on big screens, you still get a little bit of that intimate kind of close, nearby essence. And so we don't really run into problems with people carrying themselves or communicating efficiently and effectively. And that's usually that's not a problem for us.
Oh, interesting, because in many of the interviews I do, one of the main problems with remote collaboration is people say, I've never had an online meeting that's worked well.
Right.
So it sounds like you guys have mastered this just by the one-on-one training, having sort of the hands-on. Is there anything else that you're doing to make this etiquette work?
Um, we just try really hard to make the technology itself as transparent as possible. It's important for the far site or the remote participants to they shouldn't see how the technology really works. Like Ricky said earlier, it's important for them to be able to walk into a room, sit down, and be able to immediately engage with anyone else involved. Or if they're in the comfort of their own home, it should be seamless for them to have a natural flowing conversation, and we pride ourselves in being able to support that. And really, a couple training sessions here and there, but really it is the combination of technologies we use and the level of personal interaction that we accommodate for that make it really a home run, I think.
And we do get the occasional, where two people are trying to talk and you don't hear either one of them. So I mean, there's always going to be some of that where you're trying to both get your point across, but eventually there's a flow is worked out of, okay, now you can go and then I'll wait and then the next person can talk. But those are minor, but those are going to happen all the time, and those will happen in in-person meetings also. So,
Exactly.
And I think Estelle put together a document on best practices for virtual
Right.
collaboration and things that say things like mute your mic when you're not talking, and wait for someone to stop before talking over them. And those best practices sort of really do also help with the flow of our meetings.
Yeah, oftentimes, you do these things so very much that the process, the procedure to set things up becomes almost like second nature for you. And so for not only our collaborative team here locally, but also remote, our IT point of contacts at our various teams, we have various levels of checklists and documentation write-ups to help kind of aid either new coming IT support specialists or existing ones that perhaps it just skipped their mind or something. But we have these documents readily available for all sorts of different levels of support people or even just participants. We have all of these available. In addition, we have YouTube like training videos, and so we'll record kind of offline little tutorials. Ricky's done one about how to essentially join a Connect meeting that we would host. And so these little things cover, the basics of starting your webcam, starting your microphone, how to chat, and so how to share content, things like that. And we might not be available sometimes for that one-on-one training, or maybe the remote participant is on travel and doesn't have an opportunity to sit in on a training session. So we can give them this documentation and allow them to kind of train themselves at their earliest convenience.
So it sounds like you've got a lot of things in place for making this work. And what I'm curious about is what's not working. What do you struggle with in this system?
Accommodating schedules is sometimes a difficult thing, especially when you're dealing with scientists. There's always conferences, there's time zone differences, there are meetings, there are countless numbers of meetings and things that are going on. So sometimes it does get to the point where we're rescheduling training sessions so often that it may not happen. So then we resort to another way of giving them resources and things like that. So that's one difficulty. And that happens quite a bit.
So another thing there's often times where there's a workshop where they're sort of scheduling it as if it's a completely in-person workshop, where it might be an 8-hour day, so it's a one-day, all 8-hour session. Those don't work well for a virtual event because you get much more fatigue for a remote participant. So
Interesting.
if they bring us in early enough on the scheduling of events, we find that if you break it up to like 4 hours, no more than 4 hours over maybe a couple of days, it is much better experience for the remote participant, because watching a screen for 4 hours is much more fatiguing than actually in a room at a table. You tend to get up more often if you're in person. There's just much, and you're not looking at that same distance, that same screen the whole time. And so it definitely, the attention span, I think, isn't as great if you're doing a 8-hour virtual event as opposed to 2 4-hour events. So little things like that we're trying to bring into the equation during the planning process. Oftentimes that's out of our hands. They come to us already saying, this is our set in-person schedule, and then the virtual people have to just sort of fit into that. And so that's always a difficulty, trying to keep the numbers of connected virtual people later on in the day high, because they tend to drop off after a certain amount of time, or their retention of what's being said also drops off after a certain amount of hours.
Speaking of dropping off, these guys do a great job of trying to accommodate new technology as it's coming out, and all kinds of different technologies, different browsers, computers, and now handheld devices and mobile devices. And we've had some trouble with the mobile devices just in the connectivity issues, cellular data perhaps. Maybe their connection isn't, they don't have a really good bandwidth going, and so then their participation suffers because either they're dropping out or they're getting staggered, stuttering on their screen, or they drop out entirely, and if we're not prepared for it, the meeting will announce so-and-so has left the meeting or something, and that can be a distraction. So those are some additional challenges we've run across in trying to accommodate the mobile devices.
And what about with data, with sharing? I'm assuming that all of these I'm making the assumption, maybe I'm wrong, but these scientists are all trying to share data together. What are you using for that? I mean, there must be huge challenges there.
Well, for instance, to give you an example, like the forum, right? Our latest Exploration Science Forum. Last year we were under still the NLSI Lunar Science Institute. We had the virtual Lunar Science Forum. During these forums, the presentations are all about the science that these teams and these specialists have been working on over the last year, and so a lot of new discoveries and things like that. So just like an in-person conference, it's a presentation, and so we'll be able to let them upload their slides, share their screen in some cases, but essentially, at the same time you can see the person at the virtual environment. You can see the presenter, their face, but then you can also see their slides, and that's for us at least, it's been one of the most effective ways. If they have animations, if they have movies, we can always accommodate that, and it comes across with respect to no data being lost. They're not having any problems really translating their science information virtually. So that's worked really well for us.
Also, Ashkan is developing a database for sharing files and data as well, a secure place online that's easily accessible anywhere around the world for teams to upload or download, graphs, images, data products, those kinds of things to facilitate the sharing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Dropbox, but a much more secure system for our teams to be able to share those kinds of data and be accessible to large file sets. So that's hopefully soon to be coming out for our teams.
Yeah. Yeah, for example, Google does this very well with their suite of Drive applications, like Google Docs, Google Sheets. We're very much looking at that same kind of process and that same system, except the idea is, well, this is very oftentimes sensitive, but perhaps not classified information, but still the nature of these reports are things that haven't been published yet. And so these kinds of things can't live on servers that aren't in secure locations on federal ground or things like that. So that's when we can come in and accommodate these types of systems for them.
And is security then an issue? Oh, Teague, sorry, you were about to say something.
No, I was going to talk about the Lunar Mapping and Modeling Portal as another instance of overlaying data sets and sharing, but I can talk more about that later if you'd
No,
like.
let's go into that. That sounds great, actually. Yeah, my question can wait.
Well, I had and I actually have, I can send you a fantastic video of the Lunar Mapping and Modeling Portal project. They actually had at our Lunar Science or our Exploration Science Forum in July, they had a demo of a touch screen tabletop display that was taking existing data sets from our various teams and rendering them and allowing them to overlay. So for example, we had a high-def image of the moon. This is the moon at a centimeter scale resolution. And then one team was researching the properties of the regolith, where was the iron deposits or the water sources. And so they laid their data set out over the surface of the moon, and you could see now blue areas where there was some possible water ice, some red areas where there were possible iron deposits. And then another team, had been studying the slope profiles, and they were trying to do a mission planning for a rover to find out, okay, if we had a day on the lunar surface and we could explore for a few hours, what are the best targets to explore? And now they had overlaid the slope profiles so they could see where their rover could climb or couldn't climb, and they saw the overlaid data of what was in the soil. And so in real time and collaboratively with their data sets overlaid, they could plan for the best course for the rover to go in the least amount of time to visit the best spots and get some ground truth on what our remote sensing satellites have detected. It was just one example that was very cool feature of the forum. The forum is every year around the Apollo anniversary, July 20th around. And so I want to invite anybody who's here watching this to tune in remotely next year or come in person and visit this forum. They'll learn all about the latest cutting edge science research going on at NASA and of all of our partners, who come every year to share the latest and greatest science research that's coming out of their offices, and view cool things like the Lunar Mapping and Modeling Portal. I'll send you a video so you'll have some actual context of what I was just talking about.
I would
And
love
also
to promote
at
that.
at these forums, we often demo new technology. Ashkan Najad had been working on integrating Google Glass, for example. So how could Google Glass be used in a collaborative research environment? And so we had some demos of that, as well as Ricky has identified the local double robotics vendor in Sunnyvale here in Silicon Valley, who produced a very inexpensive robot for virtual participants to actually roll around and explore the forum and some of the talks and some of the posters and things that you could see. We have poster sessions where everyone hangs the posters of their research, and they can actually virtually walk down the hall and look at these posters, maybe even snap a picture of a QR code that takes them to a website for more details. And offering that to the public has been wildly successful. That's actually how Lizette and I met first on one of these virtual robot tours. So please come and visit us next year. Look us up on our website, survey.nasa.gov, as July rolls around, and figure out how you can participate.
Oh yeah, it's on the calendar. I've got to say. So I want to quickly ask about the robot, and because of course when I was on the mailing list and I saw the news about, oh, come take a tour in the robot, and of course, I mean, I had to do it right away. I just signed up immediately. But what was the idea behind the robot, and why did you initially? Was it to give the public tours, or did you have some other ideas in mind for your virtual collaboration amongst your team members?
So the robots themselves, our initial idea was for team members to remotely attend meetings here locally, or just even pop in and talk to people at the central office. Not only our team members, but also individual central office staff that may be traveling and or working from home for one reason or another. could just quickly pop in and talk to somebody down the hall, things like that. But not just limited to those kinds of. But that was the initial idea. But also make it available for other events where we could make somebody who couldn't travel to an in-person meeting then pop in that means. And so then the tour stuff sort of just expanded from that as an opportunity to show others this is the kind of technologies that we're using. And so then we even opened it up to the general public to be able to pop in and do a little quick drive and see what it's like to do this kind of a virtual attendance.
And our director periodically makes site visits at the nodes around the country and around the world. Sometimes there's a new facility that comes online. For example, our University of Colorado partners created a dust accelerator that was really exciting. And so she'll go and do these site visits. Well, if we had robots at these key nodes, you would be able to log in and actually be able to tour a facility, or like Ricky said, for one of our PIs coming to visit SSERVI Central, we could do the same kind of thing in popping over to their institute, rolling down the hall and having a discussion with the principal investigator. So that was another future potential use for these double robotics.
So a lot of times we will get the technologies and try them out ourselves first before we try and get the other teams to implement them. So that would be the idea, is that we have one or two robots at each team site that then could be used amongst the teams as well as the central office to be able to pop in and talk to people directly at a more casual style than a telecon or video telecon would enable.
Like a scheduled Skype conversation. The mobility, I would think, that really adds another level of being able to walk down the hall with somebody to go to the office. Has that? You're shaking your head, so I'm onto something there. So the mobility of the robots.
I mean, I think you're right. For the unscheduled meetings where you don't have to have a big, figure out the schedule. I know Ashkan mentioned sometimes just getting people together for a virtual meeting can be a challenge, but these robots would allow more of the improvisational connections. And so you might pop in, go to visit somebody, and find out they're out of their office. But because you're mobile and it's not just waiting for someone's computer screen, you can actually walk down to the next door. And say, oh, hey, Charlie, do you know when Carly's going to be back? And you're pretty independent that way. So I think it would be very exciting for some of the improvisational visits and ways to collaborate in that unscheduled time frame.
Yeah, and also with our conferences too, going back to our forum and things, we have a lot of times people who aren't able to travel, and the mobility on the robot gives them a chance to go look at the posters. We have an in-room poster session filled with hundreds of posters, different topics, and having this robot available, now you can meet with your colleague, walk over to a poster. You have a camera. You can start looking at the poster. You can start interacting with the poster presenter himself or herself, and really engage in conversation that way. In addition to having the virtual poster session online, which we accommodated as well, we'll let everyone upload their posters online, and then there's a comment section, the abstracts there, there's YouTube videos or audio voiceovers for presenters to give their kind of 2 cents about what they want you to take away from their poster. And so, having all these, again, available really makes for a interactive and engaging experience.
Yeah, I can imagine, even though you have the poster online and people can see it if they go online, there's something different about being at the conference with people and looking at the poster, and somebody's next to you and you can just say, hey, what do you think? Or
exactly.
I'm having this thought, yeah.
Especially for students also, because it's they might not be at the level for an oral presentation just yet, or maybe their research is more tuned for a poster presentation. And so it's a great way for them to have more experience with public interaction and public speaking and really conveying their science to their peers. And so that's really important, and that's something that is hard to translate virtually, but it's something that it's a skill that you'll build in person more so than online.
So this actually brings up a question for me, which is when people work together in the office, there is lots of improv time. There's that the water cooler time, the casual conversation. Do you have those times? Do you schedule those kind of things for your virtual teams? Is that something that you do, or is that? I know some people have virtual lunches, or like my friend and I have virtual tea, or but
Yeah.
it seems important for collaboration.
Right. Our technologies are open to our team members 24/7 from anywhere, anytime. They have dedicated virtual environments, virtual rooms that they can go to at any moment's notice, and they can log in and they can start engaging in conversation. They can share files back and forth. They can, see each other, whatever they want to do. It's always available for them. And especially when we're hosting virtual events, we like to take into account the fact that it is online, and so the agenda should accommodate virtual breaks. And during those breaks, we could, open up the chat for more public engagement and more group discussion, or we can group people into smaller groups and have them kind of talk amongst themselves and things like that. So we try hard to kind of mirror as much as we can from the in-person stuff to the online environment. And it's only getting better. Technology advances every day, and what we have right now is great. But I mean, it's only going to get better moving forward into the future, I think.
I have one question from the audience, which is interesting because it actually brings up something that it's a funny question. But maybe I'll start with: do you work at all with any of the astronauts or people that are actually in space? Do you have sessions with them as well?
I think, Teague, if you want to say it, or
Well, just that we do work with Yvonne Kegel, who is an astronaut who has been into space. So yes, we do work with the actual astronauts. And in the exploration side of our research, of course, we're very interested in accommodating for human exploration. And so human factors become a big issue and rolls into some of our research. What was the second part of the question, though? Besides interacting with the astronauts, you were asking how we did that?
Well, the question from the audience member is, how can you trust people to do work when they're all the way up in space? But I think it also applies to any of your virtual teams. That comes up in every single interview, which is, the main resistance to working virtually for people is that they don't trust that people are actually doing the work.
Right. Well, astronauts are on a very strict schedule, and their time up there is precious because it's limited resources, and it takes a lot to deliver things to the space station. And fortunately, from space, you really can only connect back to Earth virtually. There is no other way
Right.
to work and collaborate with us. So, yeah, we're fortunate that the people on the International Space Station, for example, we recently had a team who worked with the astronauts to remotely deploy an antenna on Earth via a robot as a mission scenario for remotely deploying that antenna on the moon. So this was actual astronauts in space station command and controlling a robot to do science research. And they did that fantastically. They are pros at connecting virtually through all these kinds of collaborative methods, and so it really went off without a hitch.
Yeah, on top of being superhumans.
Yeah, impressive much. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But in terms of this trust issue, I mean, to me it seems like, wow, it's NASA. These are all professionals. Everybody has the same vision, and it's an inspiring vision. So you would think, oh, we can trust people. But does that come up?
Well,
Go ahead, Ricky.
so as our teams go, I mean, they're only funded for a certain amount of years to do a specific job, and so if they don't do well in that, they don't succeed in the proposal, they may not get funded for the next round. So it's upon them to do the job and do it well, or else they won't get funded and they won't be part of the team. So that's a simple carrot for them to do well.
There's a lot of trust, and ultimately it comes down to results. And if they're publishing and their research is helping NASA in its mission, then they'll continue to be funded and continue to be teams with SSERVI. If not, then it's likely that someone else in the next round of funding proposals will supplant them with a new research effort that may be more promising.
It's interesting that you say this as one of the, I host a Building Trust on Remote Teams workshop, and I think that I think the number one tip I give is you have to go to being results-oriented instead of time-oriented. Normally we pay people to work in an office a certain amount of time, and they get paid for that time. And with remote teams, I think you have to move to tasks. What are they getting done? What's the accomplishments? Are they meeting their goals? Are they hitting their objectives? So glad to hear it's the same with NASA. So we're nearing the end of the hour, I'm noticing. I could go on forever, but I want to be sensitive of the time. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you guys want to tell me about your experience with remote teams, or something that you had hoped that I would have asked that I've ran out of time for now? I just want to leave some space for extra things.
I would just invite people watching to follow us on Twitter, Facebook. We've got 50,000 people so far following us. The number seems to grow all the time, and we're periodically putting out little news stories about what's happening in NASA or what's happening with our teams. And so just come and participate and join us.
So what is the Twitter handle where people can find you?
You could find us at NASA_Lunar, but also we're transitioning. That was from our Lunar Science Institute handle, which is verified, but we have a new Twitter also flowing in at Moon and Beyond. Great.
Great. And the website, again, I think is servi.nasa.gov, so if people want to have information about the website. And I've got the link for where people can schedule a robot tour. Is that still happening?
The robot tours have been put on hold right now due to resource restraints, and we're getting to be busy in finalizing our end-of-the-year activities. But we do plan on offering them again, and especially, I imagine, around next year's forum. So stay tuned on the website. We'll post something when that becomes available again. Right now, we're not offering the tours at this time.
Okay, but they're coming up again, so people can hope, and they can email, and they can follow you on Twitter. And I'm sure you have a newsletter, I know. So plenty of ways to get in touch and to keep in touch on what's happening there. It's very exciting research. I really appreciate speaking with you guys today. I probably have a dozen follow-up questions, but I'll email those, or we can schedule another interview in the future. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure.
Welcome.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. Until next time, everybody, be powerful.